Welcome, Michiel. So excited to see you. It's been way too long. We just got
Yes.
back from the training magazine conference in Orlando, and people were asking about you.
Oh,
I was,
really?
yeah, they were like, remember that guy that did the escape room, Michiel? And I'm like, yeah, Michiel. And they're like, everyone still talks about how great it was and how they went back and created programs from it, which is
Wow.
exactly what we want to happen, right? That they can
Yes.
see themselves designing and creating and making their training programs much more engaging and fun.
So
So,
I can
yeah.
imagine the energy now when now the conferences are all getting back to real life conferences, the energy that you get, it's awesome. I'm really longing back to the days of the real life conferences, like the GamiCon in New Orleans or Chicago. Awesome.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll be back in New Orleans in September because TechLearn is
Really,
going back there.
really.
And we were
Okay,
talking
I'm booking a
about,
ticket right away.
yeah. In fact, Jonathan and I are going, I think the second week in March. It's first or second week, I can't, but we're going to go do a site visit because we don't even know like what's still there or what new might be there. Because I know like in Austin, the town is just flourishing
Yeah,
and it looks totally different than it did before
really.
shutdown. So yeah, it's all new. It's a completely different city. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful city. It's just really different. So, and
And why
I,
New Orleans?
pardon me,
Why New Orleans?
why are we going to New Orleans?
Yeah, why there?
Because TechLearn sponsors us. So Training Magazine is our sponsor, and they move the TechLearn conference every year. So we've been in Chicago, we've been in Atlanta, uh, Austin. They're going back to Austin in 2024. And New Orleans has a nice draw. It's a place that it's on their list, just like Austin is, it's on their list of places they want to see. New Orleans has that wonderful history with
Yes.
jazz and Mardi Gras and so just really nice history. Ghost, we got Ghost in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
So now they
Fortune
always
tellers, yeah. I remember when we were there a few years ago. It's really an exciting place.
I know. We were talking about hoping that place where we had the after party with the peanut butter sandwiches is still open. So that's our first place we're going to check to make sure.
Wow. I still share that story because I love the story. We'll tell that whenever when we're back in New Orleans. We're going to tell the story. Really love that.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. We of course would love to have you there. And one of our challenges is in getting people back here and to come to the States is getting their visas. Like Javier Velasquez, because he
Yeah.
won the international award for best use of gamification pre-COVID. Last time we were live, we couldn't get him over here to Austin in the fall because he couldn't get into the consulate till like 2024.
Okay. I
I
think
was
that's
like,
different per country because
yeah,
I've
it
been
must
there
be
a few
different
months
per country.
ago.
I would
Yeah.
assume. Yes, I would assume very different. Talk with me because you were just here in the States. You were doing
Yes.
something crazy. What were you doing?
I had the privilege of designing an escape room-like game for 100 people in sort of a Western frontier town, like a Wild West town, which is already there. It's used for entertainment. So there was an entire village rebuilt completely with everything what you think of with an old frontier town, with a mine and a bank and a saloon. And that was the location that we got to design a game for 100 leaders of our multinational company.
Very nice. So now does that town it exists to have events? Is that why it's there or movie shoots
It's
or
yeah, it's near Phoenix, like 2 hours from Phoenix.
yeah,
So it's really built on a ranch to host parties and
nice.
events.
That's
But
perfect,
as
right?
soon
Yeah.
as you got that, we already knew what the game would be about because the story is there. Same as with New Orleans. If you're there, the stories are there, and if this is the backdrop, then designing a game is a breeze.
Yeah. Talk with me about your company name is called
Living
Living Story.
story.
And your focus in your program is the story then? Is that the found that you build on? Do you start with, what do you start with?
I think, well, I've got about two questions there. So,
Okay.
yes, the story is immensely important. So we are using our own design tool whenever designing game-based learning, whether that's a serious game or gamification or anything else, or an escape room. So, of course, the first step would always be, what are the learning goals? What do we have to achieve in real life? What do we want to change? What kind of behavior change do we want? What do people have to learn or be aware of? That's step one. And then the next step will always be, for us, some sort of epic story. So you get so much whenever there is a story, and that does not have to be like an epic story like an Iliad or an Odyssey. It can be very simple. It can be a theme with a little bit of storyline, but it gives such an immense possibility for immersion. Because if there's a world, I know, for example, that at the Sentencia, you're really wild about pirates. Right?
Yeah.
Whenever
I was going to say that about New Orleans, but then I thought, oh, leave the pirates out, Monica. But that's part of New Orleans history, is the pirates. It's a big part of it, right?
But the thing is, as soon as you say pirates, there is a world connected to it. You know, you see ships and you see quests and gold, and there's an immediate
Adventure.
world, and
Yeah.
you get it
Yeah.
for free. So,
Yeah.
and that's with a lot of worlds or stories that are familiar. There are like 20, 30 themes that you see a lot that lend themselves, like the Wild West, that lend itself very well, because everybody will have an idea of who are the people here, what's the situation, how. So that's what I really love about story, theme, and setting.
I like it too, because I think like, especially in learning programs, if it has that a familiar plot line, like, you know, stranger in a strange land, like, let's just say, like the traditional, like, Wizard of Oz, like, you know, Dorothy in Oz, like, we can all get our brain around, oh, this is a person traveling, she or he doesn't know the people, the culture, and has this challenge to overcome to get to where she wants to get to, right? These plot lines that we're familiar with can really help, I think, our learners feel comfortable about not knowing what's coming next, but knowing what's coming next, right? Like, I can expect a certain trajectory in my tale.
Yes. And
Yeah.
whenever you're designing a learning program, then you want to take away much of that stress, but because they will need all the energy to do the learning and to do activities. So as soon as they know, oh, okay, we're in the Wild West, and okay, that's familiar. I'm a cowboy, or I'm guarding the bank. Then that's very clear, and they don't have to bother about that. They kind of know what's expected, and now they can focus on what's really important.
Did your leaders of these were leaders of a multinational company, did they wear did they have their boots and hats? Did they come in?
No, not necessarily. No, they didn't. But the fact that they were there,
Yeah.
it made them feel like cowboys, almost.
Yeah, I would think that some of them were all in, like they packed for it, and others were, they assumed it once they were there, because that's usually the mix of the crowd, right? You have your people that, because we were just at Disney, and our theme was may the learning force be with you. So of course that lends itself to Star Wars, and we had people in Expo Hall in Star Wars costumes, which is great. I love it. I don't own one, but I'm glad that they do and that they wore them, right? Yeah. That's delightful for me. I think it's great that they are all in on it. So when you think, now I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole because we could spend a long time talking about it, but one of the challenges that we're having right now, like even with our throwdown, with that, our competition that we have, is the whole discussion of narrative, because, technically, does gamification even really have a narrative, or does that make it game-based learning? And our rubric really emphasizes the narrative as part of the evaluation of the project, but we're redesigning the rubric this year that narrative does not have to be a part, because we're seeing some excellent gamification that, of course, it doesn't have to have the narrative. It has the mechanics that are driving the engagement and the learning with basically, I mean, there's not even a context, like it's what the course is about, but that's it. I have a hard time, let me rephrase that. I love narrative so much. I'm not sure why I'd walk away from it. But I can see why some people may choose not to, or programs might.
Awesome. Yeah. I think that's interesting to see. It's, of course, it's great to see that there are, of course, many examples that seem to work without having a narrative. It only shows that game when you've got good game designing, good elements, and you know how to use it, then they will work for you. I think game design, like a narrative or story, can make things more enjoyable. It can really help you in your design, can really help the player. Is it necessary? I don't know. So I can imagine where you're struggling with.
Yeah, right. And then you have a company
style.
named Living Story, so we better not talk about that story isn't essential, right? What the hell, Monica? That's what my company does.
It doesn't have to be a big story, if
No, it doesn't, right?
no.
I think about, I was babysitting my son's dog. We were walking through the dog parking lot to the dog park. There was a bumper sticker on the back of the car. It was a little dog's paw and 3 words: who rescued who? And I started crying, because that's a story, right? Like, I'm like, oh my gosh. And that's 3 words that just has, and I don't even really like dogs. I mean, I like other people's dogs and I'll babysit them, but I'm not a dog parent, right? That's not who I am. But I couldn't believe my eyes were welling up with tears, and
Awesome.
because
So
there's a
that's
beautiful
what
story.
that's what it does with people. Even if the story is very simple. Let's take Angry Birds as an example. Yeah, Angry Birds, highly popular. It does have a backstory. It's like birds throwing sticks or
Yeah,
stones
yeah,
at
yeah. Knocked an egg out.
the
Yeah,
pigs.
yeah.
So that's the whole story. Maybe you get introduced in the very first level, or but then you can run a game for years based on that
Right.
little piece of
Little,
story.
yeah, yeah.
Just goes to show
Um,
you, as long as you have a setting when designing the game, things make sense. And sometimes it doesn't even have a story, but if you see the elements of the game, you can build your own story. Like take a game like Monopoly. If you look at the playing pieces of Monopoly, I think, yeah, you've got a hat and a car, and you've got weird pieces for a game like Monopoly. There is no backstory of that kind in Monopoly. You've got just the bare game dynamics, but somehow you can make sense of it, and it addresses to the pleasure you have in the game somehow.
right.
So we
Yeah.
are pattern-seeking beings, and we love to connect the dots, and we make up our own stories, which is fine as well.
Right. That's what I was thinking with Monopoly. We imagine we are some mogul, right? That's the story, as we acquire property and wealth. Yeah. So are you back to doing a lot of live again? Are you live? Are you doing virtual?
I'd love to. In the coming months, we're doing something for a museum here. It's not an event, it's a really part of they call it the most interactive museum in the world. And I think it is. We're doing something for that. We're doing a game circuit with something we're working on right now. And I think I've got a few things lined up for these years. Not really events, but I do like events, like the thing that we did in Arizona. It's one of the forms of games, but I really love to do something with 100, 200,000 people at a time. Lovely.
Yeah, that's really good. So your style is one that's what I love about it is that you bring you into it. So both you and Karen, you are the company and the programs that you design. You're getting this package of this creativity, as well as order, and there's all these components that come together with your company. But when people are approaching you, like a chief learning officer or someone who's making the decision about training or an event, like what, if they're asking you, like, what is this game-based learning that you speak of, Michiel? What is that? What is the one thing that you think like a chief learning officer or learning manager should know about game-based learning, gamification?
Yeah, good question, especially if you do not have that much experience or maybe are cynical towards playing or games or game-based learning. The credo of our company is, are you serious? And when we talk about serious games and game-based learning, it's something that we take very, very serious. Because playing games has immense power. And sometimes I need to explain that a bit. So if you have to learn something to a large group of people, whether those are your children, your employees, your customers, then you only have so many options. And that can be a training or a lesson or a workshop. And truly, most lessons are like standing and receiving. They're one-sided. They're quite often boring. Period.
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 Yeah.
And people nowadays they grew up in a world with games. That's our default mode. So that's what engages them. And they should take that seriously, because whenever you play a game, instead of just listening or watching or listening to a podcast or seeing a video in your learning management system, when you're playing a game, you're actively doing something. And the thing is, in that specific word, do, you are doing, or you're triggering people to do something, to engage themselves emotionally with all their senses. And in that way, they are creating something. And that taps into, of course, intrinsic motivation. And then they are motivated to learn. So why should you not take games and playing games and gamification? Why should you not take it serious? If your responsibility is to learn something to large groups of people, you should take learning serious, and you should take serious games and game-based learning serious.
Yeah, I love it. Really do. Because that's the word that we hear, right? Like, we are serious people and we're doing serious work, and it's time to put down the games and get to work. And it's the exact opposite of what is truth. Because if we need people to learn how to do something so they can do something, then they've got to learn it so they can do it. And that means that that's not just sitting there being a sponge.
Do you still come across that a lot, the taboo on playing? Yeah.
Constantly. I was just at a conference. In fact, we were at a conference doing a session. We did 2 days of gamified game-based learning. Just like we started with designing a game, playing a game, then we went into gamification, but there wasn't many, but a few in the audience wrote the like in a review, like afterwards, like there shouldn't have been so much emphasis on playing games, or why would you start why would you the game, why would you start why would you use a game? Why would you use a game to start as a base for learning? And I'm like, because the title of the course was game-based learning. I mean, like, how did you not know that would be what we were doing, was game-based learning? It's the definition is in the title. So I know exactly. We just looked at each other flabbergasted.
If anything else, it's more fun, it's more effective, it's more joyful than any other form of learning. So some people have the crazy idea that it should be boring, it should be behind a computer, it should be in a dark place with...
Right. And again, that one direction, it's because that's how they learn. Well, that's how I learned. Well, that's not even true. That's how maybe lessons were given, but they weren't learning. They had to go back and spend hours in homework trying to memorize and reading on their own, right? There was no learning happen while they were sitting in that one-way direction. They were just, information was coming in, but they weren't learning it. They didn't learn it until they actually had to go back and really start trying to retrieve and recall. And yeah, it's all faulty thinking. It just astounds me. And I think, like, I don't have the science behind it either, Michiel, but I think that they were either bullied as a child, like they didn't have friends, they didn't play well with others, or when they reached a certain age, they were kind of shamed into, play is the thing of children. It's time for you to put that behind you, and you need to come in because now you're an adult. So let's act like adults. And again, I have no science. I just imagine, like, when somebody says, I don't like games, I never play games, I don't know why I think, well, what happened?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's how we learned everything as a child.
Everything. Playing is a natural state of being of a child that is in a safe environment.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and again, Michiel, no one's coming to us with those kind of questions, though, right? They're just telling us but it is true as far as, it's time to get serious, because the marketplace will never look the same again. It's moving faster than ever now.
Crazy fast.
Yeah, great. Like, and if we're not keeping up, we will become irrelevant, and companies will become irrelevant because their employees aren't keeping up, and they can't keep up in the marketplace. Yeah.
Just one question. When you're talking about becoming irrelevant, of course, these months you see a lot of things, a lot of news about artificial intelligence, and especially when it comes to creating learning videos, whatever. I think that a lot of that will be taken over by AI. Should people be afraid of that?
I am not afraid. I am excited, because it's first off, it's a huge time saver. There still is, you have to really still massage the information, right? Like, and it's not accurate or as far as it could go, right? It's a lot of it's still just touching the surface because of the information that they're calling it from was still very surface based. I think it can enhance what we're doing and save a lot of time. I think the information still needs massage. I still think it needs personalized, but it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I don't have a fear of it right now. I have a desire to see, let's see what we can do with this baby. Let's go. Right. That's where I am.
I'm thinking of that and hoping that AI will take a lot of the work that is needed to create, let's say, content and learning management systems. I think within a year from now, you could just type in, I want a series of 8 lessons about this and that subject. I want it in this video format with this kind of person. And you push a button, and a few minutes later, your entire course is there. So for all the people who aren't concerned with learning and doing that, if you save that 90% of your time, go play games in the rest of your time with the people, and really use other types of learning.
Right.
Games.
That's good. Yeah, that's I have found it really useful for like creating like the outline of where I should be going. Like, give me the framework, and then let me add some meat to that. We've been really playing around a lot, just in different areas, everything from course outlines, for marketing, for I use it a lot for analogies lately, like, how is this like this, and how could I create an analogy of comparing pirates to cybersecurity. That's not even an example, but I'm just right. Like, how could you tie those two together? It's really fun to play with. That's what I've been enjoying a lot, is the analogies. And it's like, oh, all right, I can see that. I've used it for language, names. How are you using it?
I'm just discovering it, but I'm really having a lot of fun with it. But
Yeah,
also with the images that you can generate
yeah,
with AI using DALI and OpenAI and things like that. It's
yeah.
amazing
I did.
because
I,
if we want to prototype something, and I want a submarine in the Antarctic with 5 monsters, I just put it in, and a second later, I get the image and I can use it in a prototype of my game and I can start playing. It's amazing.
right. Plus, I haven't done it that way yet for a client, but that's what I was thinking of as far as when we start to conceptualize what do they want it to look like. That can take a huge amount of time. Like I just think of one client that was like, I want it to be like Candyland. I'm not Candyland, digital game. What's the one with the candy game that everyone plays on their phones?
Yeah,
I
I
can't
know.
believe you know what I mean.
Yes, I don't play it, but I know what you mean.
Candy Crush, Candy Crush.
Candy
Yeah,
Crush
I don't
side.
play it
Yeah.
either. I find it frustrating. I don't play it, but anyhow, so I want it to be like Candy Crush. Okay, so we were showing him like some design concepts, and like no, 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 and then after like a second or third iteration, he's like, "Does it have to look so garish and childish?" And I went back to my notes. I was like, "Well, you said you wanted to look like Candy Crush." And he said, no, 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 no. I want it to be as successful as Candy Crush. I don't want it to look like And I was like, all right, well, that was a misunderstanding, but I'm glad we found it now. But just think how fast that would have been if I was just putting images into an AI and him being able to yes, no. That would save a ton of time. That's a really good idea, Mikel. I hadn't really even thought about that. Thank you. You just saved me time.
That's it.
Yeah, no, I just was saying I hadn't thought about using the images. So
Yeah.
it's really good. All right, Mikel, I, of course, and thoroughly enjoyed reconnecting with you. It's been way too long. We hope that you can join us live in New Orleans. We'd love to have you. We're thinking of all different kinds of augmented reality adventures and ghost tales. We're even doing a session on adding humor. So it'll be like, not to be a stand-up comedian, but how you can write the language that you use to bring more humor into learning, because let them laugh, let them learn. If people can relax and laugh, that'll help in the learning too. So we just have we're really wanting to build on the soul of the Big Easy, right? Like this city of jazz and lights and music and pirates and ghosts, and just really build on that. So I think Mardi Gras. Yeah, I know. Let's go, right? In September. I
I'll do
don't
my
have the
best.
exact date. Yeah, yeah. Well, we have GameCon 48B coming up February 26th through 28th. Mikel, I hope you can stop in anytime over those 48 hours. I know people would
I'd love
love
to.
to
I'd love
visit with
to.
you. Yeah, pop in anytime. When you walk in, we'll be in the Legends Lodge, so you can find a seat, and people will know where you are and they can join you. So we'll be on a couple different floors because of our registration, but that's great. It's really easy to find people in the lodge. So we'll
Looking
look
forward
forward to
to all
seeing you
the
there.
great
Yeah.
talks and whatever we're going to do. And I'm also
All
looking
right.
forward to live in New Orleans in only a few months.
Only a few months. It's going to be here really quickly. Yeah. Wishing you and Karen and your whole business and your team just great success this year as you explore new areas and try new things. And I look forward to staying connected with you, Mikel. Thank you so much.
To adventure.
All right. All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.